أهلا بيكم. الحلقة دي مختلفة في حاجات كتير. رغم إننا هنتكلم عن رواية كالمعتاد، إلا إن الحلقة هتدور في 3 أماكن: طوكيو، فيينا، والقاهرة. طوكيو المدينة اللي بتدور فيها أحداث الرواية، فيينا المكان اللي عايشة فيه الكاتبة دلوقتي، القاهرة وتحديدا المركز الثقافي النمساوي واللي أجرينا منه لقاء معاها عبر تطبيق زووم بالتعاون مع دار العربي للنشر والتوزيع اللي ترجمت روايتها للعربية سنة 2019 سميته كرافتة. هنسأل عن سبب التسمية وليه ممكن كاتبة من النمسا تكتب رواية بتدور أحداثها في اليابان، عن العزلة اللي بتناقشها الرواية وإزاي مشابهة لما عشناه في فترة الحجر الصحي. شاب عنده 20 سنة منعزل عن الحياة بقاله 2 سنين، بيقرر يخرج لكن مش بعيد. بيقضي النهار على دكة في حديقة أمام منزله، وهناك بيتعرف على زائر دائم نفس الميعاد كل يوم بيجي في كامل تأنقه. خمسيني فقد وظيفته لكنه مش قادر يصارح مراته بده. بيتعرفوا على بعض وبيبدأوا في حكي تفاصيل حياتهم بدون مواربة أو خجل. لفين هتوديهم المصارحة دي؟ وإيه تفاصيل الصداقة الغريبة اللي نشأت ما بينهم؟ Hello, Milena.
Hi.
Nice to be with you today.
Nice to meet you too.
Okay, let's start. In what way you would prefer to introduce yourself to the Arab readers?
So I should introduce myself.
Yes, in the way you want.
That's a difficult thing to do, talking about myself. But I would start with my name. I am Milena Michiko Flaser, which is maybe, a funny name because it comes from a lot of countries. Like Flasher, my family name is originally Czech because my father, he is Austrian, but he has Czech ancestors. Milena is also a Czech name. And Michiko, my middle name, is Japanese name.
Yeah.
And why? My mother is Japanese. And I was born and raised in Austria, but my mother always talked in Japanese with us kids. So that's why we felt very close to this country, to Japan. And we also went to Japan quite a lot when we were kids to spend summer holidays with my grandparents there. And it was always a lovely time we had there.
Yeah.
And I have fond memories of the country. And all those memories, I think, also went into my work, or were part of my work. And I'm a writer. I'm also a teacher of German language to foreigners. And I live in Vienna. And
Okay, that's good. And how your Paris origin have affected the way you write?
My Japanese ancestry, you mean? Yeah. I think there's something about Japan that is very fascinating to me as a writer. I think it's also because of the distance. It is a faraway country. And so this distance allows me to watch things from afar, but with a closer look, so to say. So the perspective is a bit different. If I would write a book about Austrian topics, I think maybe Austrian things are a bit too close for me. So it's easier for me to look at Japan. But at the same time, I didn't want to write exclusively Japanese books. I wanted to write books that can be transported into any other country and where people can feel at ease reading them. Also, I think my writing style is quite influenced by Japanese literature. I read a lot of Japanese literature. And the thing is that Japanese literature tends to be very, very intense in a way that it focuses on pictures, on images, not so much on the storyline itself, which is also true for my own writing.
Okay, great. You have been visited Egypt before translating the novel. Can you tell us about your impression at that time and how it would be different if you haven't now? When you visit Egypt now and you have a translated novel in Arab market?
Well, now I would be very curious to meet my Arabian readers, my Egyptian readers in Cairo or wherever in Egypt. I love to be in Egypt. It was astonishing how only a trip of 4 hours by plane transported me into a completely different world. And from the first minute on, I really loved the experience to be there. And we had a great time. I was there with my family, with my husband and our son, and they all loved it. We had a lot of we met a lot of nice people. And also what I liked about Egypt was it is very kid-friendly. People love kids. People love children. They have their own place in society. And that I extremely appreciated.
Yeah. If you meet someone who didn't know you and have never heard about, I called him a necktie, how would you present it to him?
Well, first of all, it is a book about hikikomori, and maybe I should explain the term. Hikikomori is a Japanese word, and it means to pull inward. And it describes people, mostly adolescents, who seek extreme isolation and who withdraw themselves from society. So they shut themselves in their rooms and don't leave that room for a very long time, often for a month, sometimes even for years. And so the main character in my book is such a hikikomori, but then I didn't want to write a book about him being in his room. I wanted to write a book about a reclusive who leaves that room and ventures into the world. And there he sits on a park bench and he meets another person who is equally withdrawn in a way, not in the same way, but in a very similar way. And they start to talk to each other and to build a friendship. So I would say it is a book about friendship and also a book about telling one's story and about listening to one another. Both characters, they listen to each other without judgment, which is very important for the whole story.
أنا محظوظ لأنهم يدعونني وشأني حتى يومنا هذا، فالبعض يتم استدراجهم، يتم وعدهم بإعادة تأهيلهم وباسترداد عافيتهم أيضا، العمل، النجاح. من خلال هذا الوعد البسيط على شفاههم يتم إعادتهم مرة أخرى إلى المجتمع، تلك الأرضية المشتركة الكبيرة. يتم تعويدهم أن يصبحوا كما يريد المجتمع، إلا أنني محظوظ كوني لم أوضع في الحسبان.
Coming to the name of the novel, at first it was the name from the beginning, and why you choose it?
It was the very first sentence that came and that popped into my head, so to say, when I started to write the book. And it made me aware of the fact that I shouldn't write a book about one person only, but about two persons. I called him Necktie, includes another person. And so it became actually a book about communication, about friendship, and about meeting one another.
If we imagine that the time of the event in the novel takes place after the end of the quarantine period due to coronavirus, will the main path of the novel will be different? Does fear and anxiety change human behavior?
I think that especially now, the time of Corona is a very challenging one for a lot of people because especially during lockdown, they, I think, had a lot of fears of being isolated, of not being able to meet family, not being able to meet friends, to go outside. And also, I think a general feeling of insecurity took hold of a lot of people, because suddenly a lot of things that seem so natural to us and that seem so normal to us are, breaking apart, so to say, like businesses, for instance, that you thought would be secure. And I think this causes a lot of stress for people. Also the fear of losing their jobs.
Speaking about quarantine during last months, do you think this period affected people negatively? As you mentioned, the same case in the novel when Hero stayed at home.
I want to focus more maybe on the positive effects of this period, because I realized that, especially at the beginning when the lockdown started in Austria, people were very eager to share and were very eager to help one another. Like go shopping, for instance, for old neighbors who couldn't do their shopping on their own, or to communicate more with other people through other means. I mean, not by meeting them, but by catching up with them via phone or via SMS, via email, ask old friends who you haven't seen for a long time, how are you, is everything okay? So I think it also was not only a negative time, of course it is because of the disease, but it was also a good time to find new ways of dealing with the whole situation. And I think it will stay with us, hopefully.
Yes. And for you as a writer, did the last isolation time helps you to increase your activity and writing routine or not?
Not really, because I have a son and he's 6 years old now, so he's in first grade. And schools were also shut down, so I had to teach him at home and be with him the whole day. So there was absolutely no time really to write or to be creative. And now there's summer holidays. In Austria, we have 2 months summer holidays, and that's a long time. And I hope that in fall, school will start again in the usual way, and then I will have time again to write. But I have used the time to just collect ideas, to brainstorm, to be ready for the next story, which is already waiting in line in my head.
Okay, great. Which is better from your opinion, considering writing as a full-time job with a completely daily commitment, or it's a kind of inspiration that comes at certain times?
I think it depends on the person that you are. For me, for instance, it's always good to focus on one thing. So I'm really glad to be able and to be lucky enough and to be supported also by my husband, that I can focus on writing alone and on nothing else. The thing is, when my son goes to school, I usually go to work room, and I spend the whole morning there, and I just sit down, open my laptop, and then I start to write 4 hours through straight. And I really like to focus intensely on what is beforehand. But I know authors who do it in a very completely different way, who have other jobs, for instance, and then they write here and there, and they have only like 1 hour, maybe in the evening or in the morning, and they also do a good job. So I think it's really something very individual.
Back to the novel, you confide the feeling of introverted character in very brilliant way. Is this come from a personal experience or close observation of a relevant, or is reading and research is sufficient now for writing anything?
I think what is needed most for a writer is compassion. Without, you cannot write a good story. You don't have to have the personal experience, maybe. I've never been a hikikomori myself, but I can try to imagine how it feels to be one. And that's what compassion makes possible. and empathy. Of course, it needs also a lot of research because you need to know what you are writing about. But then you also have to let go of too much knowledge because you want to create a story which is truly creative and which comes from deep within. And so I had both the research on one hand, and on the one hand side, and also trying to really walk in his shoes, in Hero's shoes.
Thank you to be with us today. It's very easy.
Yeah, it's very easy. I hope that my answers were understandable and that
great. Yes, great.
That you can work with them.